Hello and welcome to Bharat I'm Brigadier Chatterjee. We are going to be talking about the Malabar Naval Exercise. The exercise is being run in the Pacific off the Australian coast. This exercise is an exercise which has been running for long years now. The constituents, the countries which have participated, have had slight changes in between, but by and large, it's been stable. What's the reason that the exercise is now being run in Pacific? What's the reason? What's the possible weightage that this exercise will give to the Quadrilateral? These are certain issues that we will go over as we go along. And to take us along, I have with me a guest, Captain DK Sharma. Captain DK Sharma is actually coming back home. He's from our own organization, Bharat Shakti. Welcome, Captain, back home.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Captain, you've been in the Navy for a long time, and you've seen a lot of these exercises. My particular reference is the Malabar series. If you can put us on the same page, in terms of details about this exercise, when did it start, which are the countries which have been participating, what's the status now?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me on the show. So I'll just take you back in history sometime in the early 90s.
Okay.
That is when the Cold War had finished, and there was, everybody must have seen the Operation Desert Storm starting, where Iraq had, occupied Kuwait, and the coalition forces went in over there to liberate Kuwait. That is the time when the navies of the world were operating in North Indian Ocean, more so towards the Persian Gulf. And if you connect the dots now, why did US start a bilateral exercise with India? What I gather is, I don't know what has gone into the file and what policy decisions were taken, but if you see, they had their airbase in Diego Garcia. They had to have some kind of a staging operations if required. Whether they happened or not, that is, we will have to go back into history and see whether the US naval forces ever landed over there or not. But they wanted OTR bases. They wanted some air bases to operate from. They wanted a logistic train to be established. And these are a few reasons where I can, connect the dots and tell that yes, that is why the US Navy looked for a partner. And that is how the bilateral started between India and US. That is the same time when Indian Navy was, being recognized in the region as a power. You see, at that time, if you recollect, we were the only Navy, we were the Navy who was operating 2 aircraft carriers. So It was not a small Navy. Whatever, nomenclature was given, whether it is the Blue Water Navy or the Brown Water Navy, but the fact remains that Indian Navy in 90s was operating 2 aircraft carriers, and one was, replete with the Sea Harriers and Sea Kings and the works. So that was the latest thing. And also, we had the best of the ships from the Eastern Bloc. That's the R-class, most capable destroyers of their own era. So that is where US Navy would have, seen some kind of a merit. What was the quid pro quo? That is for us to, debate at a later stage. So this is how the Malabar started in 1992, and it continued as a bilateral. And then, of course, when we, did our nuclear test, there was a hiatus from 98, and then it was restarted after the bombing of the Twin Towers in 2001. So this relationship has been on-off initially. 92 it started, 98 to 2001 there was no exercise, then it recommenced, and then it went up to 2007, 2008, and then that is the time when Malabar was with the Australian Navy, came for the very first time. The Australian Navy was there, the Japanese Navy was there, the Singapore Navy was there. And also, if I recollect, there was one ship from the Royal Navy also, which was objected to very, very strongly by China, and hence the multilateral again turned back to bilateral. It was again Malabar between 2 countries, India and US. And then we found that Japan has formally joined Malabar in 2015, and Australia has completed the Quad in 2020. So as you were giving an introduction, that why Pacific? Because this exercise was otherwise conducted alternatively between IOR and the Northwest Pacific, next to the Japanese coast. So 1 year it used to be happening in, somewhere 300, 200 miles down from Chennai in the IOR region, where they used to get their supercarrier and all the SSNs and SSBNs, and we used to go over there in the Northwest Pacific. But now, last exercise was of Japan. It was hosted by Japan, and this time it has been hosted by Australia, and that is why it is off the Pacific,
Of the
off
Pacific,
the coast of Australia.
where exactly of the Pacific, if you...
Sir, it is on the northwest side of Australia. It is happening. Right now, the harbour phase must have got over.
And which are the countries that are currently participating in
So the
current
countries, the Malabar is now not a bilateral construct. It is a quadrilateral, which is US Navy, Indian Navy, Japanese Navy, and Australian Navy.
Right.
So all of them have sent their surface ships, of course.
Yeah, the naval platforms, if you can tell us.
The naval platforms which are taking part right now are two ships from India. That is, one is the stealth destroyer INS Kolkata and a stealth frigate INS Sayadri, plus RP-8I has gone there, the long-range maritime ASW aircraft. And the Japanese Navy and the US Navy has also sent the P-8Is. The Australian P-8I is also there. So this is how the Australians are also fielding their F-35s.
Are we having an aircraft carrier? I believe?
No, this time there is no aircraft carrier because they must be having some other requirements. But this time, basically, it is destroyers. The guided missile destroyers are there from all the 4 countries. And there is an element of ASW, which is in the terms of P-8I. So it is a very, very potent platform. We call it the flying frigates.
Okay.
And also the Australian Air Force has chipped in with the Foxtrot 35 aircraft, which is the air defense exercises. So you will have the surface action, the anti-submarine action, as also the anti-air threat will be taken care of in this exercise. And let me tell you, these exercises have gone a long way. We started with very basic exercises, but now they are very, very complex and it needs a lot of study. And that is why this exercise is broken into, preliminary meetings and briefings, and then you go and do the harbour phase, which also means what are the procedures to be followed and how the groupings will happen, which will be the red and the blue and things like that. And then actually it is to learn the best practices of each other.
And that's my next question to you. What do you really benefit from this? One is, of course, best practices in talking about.
Sir, interoperability is the key. Today, when you are here and the area of responsibility of these 4 democracies is going to be Indo-Pacific, like it starts from the eastern coast of Africa and goes up to the west coast of US. If you see the area of responsibility of these 4 democracies and you have a rogue nation in between, which is, trying its coercive powers and hegemonistic behavior and not believing any rule of law. So there is some kind of construct which has taken place and it is now exercising, and should there be a need to counter them, at least we will have our procedures in place. So that is where the interoperability comes in, where it comes that how will the standard operating procedures, how will we exchange information? Like it can be, detected by somebody else, acquired by somebody else, and shot down by a third navy. So this is what this exercise is all about.
Like you might have taken part in some of these exercises during your time in the Navy, etc. Is communication a problem with the language not being so?
All this is a thing of past, sir. Now we have that special equipment. Speech secrecy codes are there. Everything is going digitally. But who understands what language? That is where we all get together. We exchange our notes. The procedures are exchanged. And should there be a need, we also put sea riders. That means a US naval officer can be on a Japanese ship. A Japanese naval officer is on board an Indian ship. Indian naval officer is on board Australian ship, and this is crisscross happens, which we term as sea riders. Sea riders are basically the people who will, should there be a problem of communication or any other issue, it can be sorted out there and then.
There's something like liaison officers on board.
Correct, sir. So liaison officers with the Army and the Air Force, we have sea riders. So a team is embarked on the others platform, and but all this is well catered for because the crew of the ships change. So it is not that every time in every Malabar the same crew will be there. So that is why we have a set procedure where the teams go and visit the other country, iron out the complexities, and after that the exercise phase starts, which starts from a harbour phase and then culminates into.
Okay. Right, Captain, I've got a question. More often or not, this exercise has been held in the Indian Ocean region, very close to it. let's say, like you're talking about when the Japanese held it somewhere close to their shores. But why is it now gone so far as Australian coast and the Pacific?
Because this time, sir, they volunteered to host the exercise. So this is the first time Australia is hosting the exercise.
Okay.
And that is why it has gone there. But you will find it rotating between IOR, Northwest Pacific, and of course, that is the center of gravity now. All that messaging or whatever the Quad is trying to put across is next to South China Sea.
So do you see a relationship between Quad and
This
the
will
Malabar
eventually lead to that. All these navies which are getting together, and the point is not here to suppress any country. It is looking forward towards free and open Indo-Pacific. The rule of law, the freedom of navigation, the other things which we are talking. Unfortunately, China is not agreeing to it. Even if they have lost the case in the UN,
even courts?
they are still not following it up. You see what the problem is happening with the Philippines. So a message has to go across that all this freedom of navigation has to be allowed in global commerce. So SCS is not their private domain. It is a common. That is why it is called a global common.
Right. I've got the last question. That is about logistics. Now, how do you normally go for this exercise? It's a generic question, not just about this particular exercise. How do you go about this exercise? You're self-contained for the number of days of the exercise. Should you have a logistics requirement? Who's going to support all? There's some sort of an infrastructure already in place. How does it go?
So we have a lot of exchange agreements between these countries, and of course between the friendly foreign navies. So like we have the LIMOA, Logistics Memorandum of Understanding. Then we have our diplomats over there, our embassies are there. So whatever is required, for example, rations. The only thing which you will require in a long deployment is to be replenished is your rations. Otherwise, all the defective machinery parts or whatever, we do carry them with ourselves. And it is all, today it is in solid state. You just open the equipment which is not working and, replace it.
Yeah.
And that part can be, given to the embassy and it will get flown off. And wherever it gets rectified, that is not the problem of the ship. But insofar as logistics things are concerned, the ships are, very, very capable. They have very, very long legs. Water is not a problem. Fuel is not a problem. So insofar as rations are concerned, we do carry a lot of, dry rations, fresh rations. And also, we are also capable of switching our roles. Should there be a requirement, we have the HADR bricks. That means the
Any foreign
humanitarian aid and disaster relief. Should there be a kind of a tragedy striking somewhere, the ships can straight away go there. That is what is the mission-based deployment also, which we are doing in the IOR region. So all this is catered for depending upon the time of the year, what kind of things do happen, whether it is a cyclone, whether it is a kind of, whether we are heading towards the earthquake-prone area. So the bricks are carried accordingly. So I don't think
there's not a major logistics issue for a 10-day exercise or so. Everything is catered.
Not at all, because we have our embassies over there, we have our diplomats over there, and everything is sorted out before.
Right. I think we'll call it over here. And thank you so much for having joined BharatShakti.in. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, viewers. Thanks for tuning into BharatShakti.in. Do tune in, let us, and you'll find such interesting stories. Thank you.